Hello everyone, welcome to Wally Global. Today is April 7th, 2025. This episode is about the trade war. The Sino-US trade war seems to have escalated. Trump just threatened China to give up its tariff retaliatory measures. If not, an additional 50% tariff will be imposed on China immediately. The total tariff, plus the previous and second terms, is 126%. Does China have any card? Is there any way to escalate the fight with the United States this time, or should it kneel down? But kneeling down should be a step down. If it doesn't kneel down, what will China face? Will millions of factories close down and unemployment withstand it? A large part of China's economy relies on exports. The world's factory, what should it do? Before we begin, I kindly invite you to subscribe to my channel. It's completely free. Feel free to leave a comment, like the video, and share it with your friends to help support the channel.
Thank you for your support.
First of all, let me talk about Trump's Truth Social's post. He said that if China does not withdraw the 34% retaliatory tariffs before April 8th, the United States will begin to impose an additional 50% tariff on Chinese goods on April 9th. That is, the previous ones will not be cancelled and then added. He said that China has long used high tariffs and non-monetary tariffs to illegally subsidize companies and manipulate currency, etc., to abuse the United States. This time, the 34% retaliatory tariff is an overwhelming blow. He also said that if any country retaliates against the United States for adding tariffs, it will immediately retaliate more vigorously. The market has been volatile. Last week, the US stock market fell sharply. Then it was a roller coaster. It fell 1,700 points again, then rose to 900 points, and then fell down. There was some false information in it, etc. Today, it fell slightly again. It can be seen that the threat is really not a joke. It even said that if China does not do as it says, all talks with China will be suspended. No one will talk to you about transfer. Other talks will start immediately. This will completely isolate China. When it comes to how China should respond, we have to say whether China has any cards. People often say, Trump, do you have any cards to play? You have no card. Do you have a card? China needs to see how much it relies on foreign trade. According to online data and statistics, China's exports account for about 18% of GDP, which is 18% to 20%. Now you see here, it is 19.74%, which means that by 2023, goods exports account for 17%. Service exports account for about 2% to 3%. This proportion is really not low, that is about 20%. Many factories and workers rely on foreign trade to make money, especially the manufacturing industry in the coastal areas. The livelihoods of hundreds of millions of people are linked to exports. If the United States imposes an additional 50% tariff, it will be more than 120%. Once foreign trade declines, millions of people will be unemployed at any time. The United States is a super large consumer country. Let's look back at the total export volume of China. Is it important to look back at the United States? It turns out that the United States is about 17% to 18% of the total export volume. 17% to 18% is exported to the United States. Now it ranks first and second. The entire European Union of more than 20 countries ranks second. 29 countries rank second. Looking back here, you can see how important the United States is to China, and this number is basically underestimated. Why? Its overseas supply chain has not been calculated. For example, there are actually many Chinese funded enterprises behind the production in Vietnam and Thailand. Chinese enterprises control it, so the impact is actually greater. That is to say, it should be more than 17% to 18%. In addition, China's current economic situation is not so good. The real estate market is falling, consumption is sluggish, and manufacturers are having a hard time doing business. There is involutionary competition, deflation, and sluggish consumption. There are many companies, not just real estate companies, but even banks that need blood transfusions from the state. These are all real news reports. In addition, the overcapacity has been very difficult for the country to save in the past, and it has to constantly come up with many measures. At this time, it is hit by tariffs. It can really be said that China's situation is irreversible. You can see from these situations that China has no obstacles. Does China have any obstacles to deal with this tariff war? To be honest, China's current situation is really passive. Trump said that China has been using high tariffs and subsidies to mess up the market for a long time. China itself is not without tricks. For example, their solar industry has done very smart things. For example, large companies such as Longbai and Weitong have moved their production lines to Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, supplying more than 80% of the solar panels in the United States. Energy boards have successfully circumvented the US direct sales tariffs on China, although the US Department of Commerce has investigated and found that they are harassing and avoiding tariffs. Chinese companies have turned to Laos, Indonesia, and even the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman, to find new ways out. If Trump wants to slow down the development of global clean energy and renewable energy, it will reduce demand for China. China may really have to rely on other means, political tactics, and other economic measures. Now, China is doing some anti-capacity, and those important and key materials are banned from export. If the United States now imposes tariffs and imposes global tariffs, China will turn its production supply chain into another country. Overseas production supply chain cannot circumvent US tariffs. China can only sell its excess production capacity, etc., because it needs to maintain its workers and subsidies to keep making them. It feels like people are saying that you are dumping. This practice is very easy. Even tariffs are like spider webs, which we call spider. The chain reaction will cause other countries to strengthen trade barriers, anti-dumping investigations, and anti-dumping tariffs against China. The consequences are disastrous. In other words, the EU may impose tariffs on China, and even ASEAN countries may impose tariffs on China. Indonesia has said that it will impose tariffs on China in return. I remember there was a news report that the president of Indonesia said that he would impose a 200% tariff on China. Speaking of the supply chain, China has laid out a global supply chain. That is, the factory is in a foreign country. In fact, it is reported online that this time, not only China, but also Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia are subject to heavy tariffs of 46% to 49%. Stephen Innes from SPI Asset Management, an investment company, Innes said that this is a full-scale attack on Beijing's entire supply chain. Vietnam is China's largest trading partner. When Trump was in office, many companies went to Vietnam to avoid tariffs. As I just said, Vietnam's exports to the United States have surged. Now, Trump has not even spared Vietnam. It means that now if you take a detour to avoid tariffs, that road is blocked. Countries like Cambodia and Laos are relatively poor and rely a lot on Chinese investment. These high tariffs will definitely hit their economies. This tariff is not an ordinary one-on-one exchange. And Trump should want to use tariffs to reshuffle the US trade policy. Speaking of those countries that are friendly to China, such as Laos and Cambodia, they will be hit hard by the heavy tariffs imposed by the United States in a minute. They will succumb to the United States in a minute. It is not good for China. Now, Vietnam wants to negotiate with the United States to implement zero tariffs on the United States. It hopes to negotiate and lower tariffs. It adopts a so-called kneeling or negotiation. In turn, it also told China to do a reverse and reduce wealth, etc., and impose temporary anti-dumping tariffs. Starting from April 16th for a period of 120 days, China's steel giants, such as Baoshan Iron and Steel, have to pay a tariff of 37.13, and South Korea's Hyundai Steel has to pay 13.7%. China has 15,000 more than many other South Korean manufacturers. 67% is too much, but China's 37% is too much, almost 40%. These tariffs are because the Vietnam Iron and Steel Association said that the local industry is also under too much pressure from imports from China and South Korea. But the irony is that the United States imposed a 46% tariff on Vietnam at the same time. There was a 25% tariff before. The tariff on steel and multiple anti-dumping duties, all of which changed in a minute for China's supply chain partner countries, which is equivalent to the reverse of pig stomach and shit. On the contrary, they cooperated with the United States to recover these anti-dumping tariffs from China. At that time, China will not only have to face the United States. As mentioned yesterday, there will be more than 120% tariffs, which means an additional 50%. Even Vietnam's brothers may turn against us. These situations are becoming more and more complicated. Having said that today, do you think China has any cards to play? If you look at the degree of its domestic dependence on foreign trade exports for GDP and its share of the United States and its global supply chain, which are all added to the United States, and the current heavy hammer from the United States, can China continue to circle around and increase tariffs with the United States? Let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. Bye.